in high school.
Yeah.
Now I watch them with great interest, and I really enjoyed them. So now I have a connection to them.
See. And it's amazing, after only one watching of Phantom Menace, you remember these great lines.
Well, that was the thing that made me question how I could have been wrong about George Lucas being just a simple moron with space junk. Because I said, so much of stuff from the prequels, which are the ones everyone says are stupid, is so memorable that even though I've only seen them once and I don't remember liking them, they're so memeable, they're so referenceable. There's got to be something deep there, because that's just the way archetypes work, that you don't keep referencing something that's empty junk. If you keep going back to it, there's got to be something there that brings you back to it. And that's why I said I have to watch these again and really pay attention.
If I were to extol the virtues of Rothbard, I mean, we'd be here. My entire life is extolling the virtues of Rothbard, essentially. So, great guy. You should look him up. Oh, I will just shill an article by Tho Bishop on Mises Wire. To stop the left, America needs a Rothbardian right. You should check that out. He talks about Rothbard's right-wing populism strategy, and also how a lot of the movements that have been used to attempt to counteract the left, like, this idea of a populist right, these things have been tried and they've only empowered the left. Although I think this is something of a weak charge, because in many ways, when libertarianism is tried, this has also empowered the left, and that corporations fuck us around. And now, obviously, we know the correct answer is no, because corporatism and so on and so forth. But one should be careful, I think, of saying, careful. If you use this strategy, the left will use it against you. The left will turn everything against you. That's what they do. They poison everything they touch. I know you didn't read the article, Dan, but do you have any comments on that particular?
It's opened in my browser. I haven't read it yet, but yeah, with the Rothbard thing, it's just there's too much to say, obviously. I would say anybody who is, if you're listening to this and you read Rothbard, I don't even know how that's possible. Yeah, so go read Rothbard.
Yeah, there's literally a book, the Rothbard Reader and the Essential Rothbard. Go read one of those.
People, though, what I will say is this: if you have not read Rothbard, or if you've maybe read very little of Rothbard, and I was going to recommend one thing for you to read, I would recommend two things.
I mean, honestly, that's it. That's the Rothbard problem, right?
And
if you told me to recommend one Rothbard thing, I'd recommend two.
Yeah. I would say everybody should read the book, not the essay, the book, Egalitarianism as a Revolt Against Nature and Other Essays. Mm-hmm. That book is one that I feel like a lot of people listening to this might not own that book. You should own it and read it.
I don't even think I own it.
You've read Egalitarianism as a Revolt.
Oh, of course.
Right? So that's in there. There's a lot of great essays in there. Every one of them almost is not as good at that, but on the same level as that. Same ballpark as that in terms of quality and just how interesting it is. And
okay, how's it saying? I'd say pick a book and pick an essay. Since Rothbard wrote a bunch of books and essays, pick one book and pick one essay.
Oh, so you can pick a second book.
Well, no. So Egalitarianism as a Revolt Against Nature is the essay that...
Okay, then I'll say to pick that essay, Egalitarianism as a Revolt Against Nature. But if you're going to read it, you have to buy the book that it comes in. You can't just read it online. Don't cheat. Buy the whole book. And then the book I would recommend is another one I feel like people don't read as much. It's called Economic Controversies. It's a really... Mises Institute has a nice edition. It's a big hardback book that is a collection. I think it was originally published as The Logic of Action, which I like that title way better. Sounds more cool to have on your bookshelf. And it was in 2 volumes, which just always looks cool when you have 2 volumes of something. Makes you look smarter. But Economic Controversies is a book of basically not all, but a selection of Rothbard's economic journal articles and essays. So it's not like for popular audiences. It's, one second. I'm just going to breeze through it real quick, because if you can see my copy of it, I have well over, the book is probably 600 pages. Oh no, it's comes in just under 1,000 pages. and I probably have 100 sticky tabs in here to alert me to different points. I'm just going to read some of the essay titles that are great. The whole first section is on like the method of Austrian economics. All those titles are great. He has a whole section on the history of the Austrian school. Then he has a section on property in the public sector, including the essay Law, Property Rights, and Air Pollution, one of his best. The Fallacy of the Public Sector. Statistics, Achilles' heel of government. He has a section on taxation, including the myth of neutral taxation, the case against the flat tax. Somewhere in there, he has a point about in favor of the poll tax. Section on trade and freedom, which includes freedom, inequality, primitivism, and the division of labor, which is maybe one of my favorite essays from him. Capitalism versus statism, a future of peace and capitalism. He has a whole section on money and banking, which is even these ones that sound boring. When you read them, you go, holy shit, this is so interesting. And then he has a section on criticism of other people, which I'll only mention one, which is the great essay, Milton Friedman Unraveled. I'm giving you a homework assignment to buy 2 books, Economic Controversies and Egalitarianism as a Revolt Against Nature and Other Essays. What about you, Marcel?
Okay, so if I'm going to stick to the actual rules, and since you already recommended Egalitarianism Revolt Against Nature, then my essay will be A Strategy for the Right. The book will be The Betrayal of the American Right.
Yes, I'm glad we got those.
Yeah, it would have been dreadful if one of us had to mention it.
The academic brought up all political topics, and the layperson brought up all academic topics. The multifaceted Rothbard. That's the book I'm working on.
And the 2 books that Rothbard, I would say, were his magnum opuses are For a New Liberty, The Libertarian Manifesto, and Man, Economy, and State. So For a New Liberty expounds, it's a libertarian manifesto, and Murray Rothbard gets to tell us what a libertarian is because he was the first person when discussing the idea of libertarianism as a right-wing pro-market ideology, right? That was Rothbard, right? Yes, there were those other lefty anarchists who were calling themselves libertarians to disguise the fact that they were communists. But when talking about the idea of a pro-market ideology that supports liberty in the American conception, Murray Rothbard defines what a libertarian is. And so he wrote For a New Liberty. And then for his economic
book
views,
that is.
Dan mentioned Economic Controversies, right? And yes, sure, right? Especially for a layperson, why not? But if you want to get the full Monty, right? Man, Economy, and State is Rothbard's economics textbook. It is all verbal reasoning. There are very few graphs, right? There are like almost no equations, right? It is all just holding your hand for like 800, 900 pages and walking you through step by step, right? In a way that is meant to be understood by lay people, which was one of his biggest crimes, apparently, was his belief that economics is something that is not mystical or arcane or something that normies are too stupid to understand. Murray Rothbard believed that actually if economics is built off of all human action and the things that you do in your life every day, right? Humans should be able to understand it in principle, right? Doesn't mean that we can manage a whole economy. Obviously, Rothbard did not believe this. But understanding economics and how, where does the interest rate come from? How do banks work? What are the effects of these things? What is the point? Rothbard said these things are completely understandable. There's nothing super secret. I'm not some special person. Rothbard is a very special person, right? But understanding economics only incidentally made him special, right? In theory, anyone can. And so Man, Economy, and State is his full explanation of economics.
How hard is that to read, in your opinion?
Not very hard at all.
Really?
It's just long. It's just very long. I had to read it for Rothbard Graduate Seminar at the Mises Institute. Oh yeah, full disclosure of my like institutional connections. Right. So I had to read it. I'll be honest, I did skip like certain parts because I'm like, I know this, right? Because I'm going for PhD in economics. I'm already very well versed. So certain parts I just like.
He's studying this for school, so therefore he skipped parts of it. But you, the layperson, should read the whole.
Yes, and if you think it's daunting, this is perfectly fine because Bob Murphy, great man that he is, he wrote the Man, Economy, and State Study Guide.
What does that mean?
What?
I always wonder what that means. Why does it need a study guide? It's just a book. Well,
it's a textbook, and the study guide has like discussion questions. It has a lot of things in bullet point form. So sometimes Bob Murphy will just talk about like, here are the points, but he won't explain like the full chain of reasoning. He's like, here are the main points in each section. If you only read the study guide, then you know a whole lot of true things. But then when I'm like, okay, why does the interest rate do this? You'd be like, oh, the interest rate does this because it reflects people's time preferences. Well, what does that mean? But the study guide is incredibly helpful. And I'll let you in on a little secret. When I was doing this for RGS and I needed to read a bunch, I used the study guide in the parts where I was meant to be like presenting things. The study guide was how I assembled my notes.
It does go to show something that we had to each come up with one article and one book. And all the books we mentioned, if somebody had just written that one book and then died,
yes,
we would still be talking about them 60 years later. Like if all he did, I think Tom Woods has a speech about this, but if all he ever did was write the articles in Economic Controversies, or if all he ever did was write Man, Economy, and State, or if the only thing he ever wrote was For a New Liberty, or he only wrote his 2-volume History of Economic Thought, which is really good, or he only ever wrote The Ethics of Liberty, or he only, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
He has like 10 different things that if he only did that one thing, you'd go, wow, that guy was a giant in libertarianism. But he did like this 10 times.
And I just want to reaffirm, while, yes, Murray Rothbard is a special person and you should all fall on your knees in gratitude that you got to live in a world with him in it, at the same time, he is correct that, and I also think I'm a very special person, right? But I also believe that any person can read Man, Economy, and State if you're willing to put in the time, and you will know more about economics than, just vast majority, an unspeakable majority. Even if you read it and you don't even review it, you just read all the words and you don't take notes, you don't do anything. You just go through it and you're like, and you make an active effort not to absorb it or study it. You just read it. You will still know more about economics than far in excess of 80% of the human race. I would say you would know more about economics than 98% of the human race and maybe 80% of the economics profession, if you just read it in full. So just to reaffirm the list was, so the two big Rothbard books are For a New Liberty and Man, Economy, and State. Dan, your book was Economic Controversies, and your article was Egalitarianism as Revolt Against Nature, and my book was The Betrayal of the American Right, and my article was A Strategy for the Right. Yeah. I accidentally almost said Reclaiming the American Right. This is another book, which you should read. That one is by Justin Raimondo. Right, so Murray Rothbard wrote Betrayal of the American Right. Justin Raimondo, another great man, who we should also be grateful to live in a world with, wrote Reclaiming the American Right.
We did an episode just of reading recommendations. The last recommendation we have would be go to the bank, get a business loan, quit your job, buy all these books, use the loan to pay your rent and to buy more books. I think it was Joseph Campbell, the guy the scholar of mythology and archetypes, who when he was 25 graduated college or grad school, and he moved to a cabin in the woods and just read every day for like 2 years. That's what you'd have to do just to get through all the Rothbard books.
Yeah, nobody has read all of Rothbard, right? I don't even think Lou Rockwell has read all of Rothbard.